Hi everyone, this is Paul and Tom, the Valhalla podcast again. This is the first podcast we've done. We just did an introduction, briefly, 10-minute little talk, but this is going to be the full one. This is going to be my story of being a prison officer, HMP Forest Bank in Salford, well, Eccles really. Forest Bank, for people that don't know, is a Category B local jail. The current maximum population, I think, is around 1,464 prisoners. So it's quite a big jail. There's a lot of lads in there. Started off with about half of that, about 700 capacity. But as time has gone on over the years, it's increased, obviously, due to prison population and whatnot. Private prisons, it's run by Sodexo, which are a massive company, as you know. Massive conglomerate, full of, does all kinds really, food, hospitality. Obviously, prisons is one arm of the business. They've got prisons all over the place, all over in different countries. The only prisons that they don't do are ones actually countries that they do death penalty. They don't do anything like that. But as I say, they're a private prison and they're quite different to HMP, which are public prisons. They run with a lot less staff, due basically because it's a business. It's not like a public prison, so they're in it to make money basically. So there are subtle changes. A lot less staff is the main one really.
Yeah, and that actually plays a key factor in your story later on, doesn't it?
Yeah, huge. As I say, the staff do an incredible job. Because as I say, basically, if you're running on a wing, whereas Forest Bank, as it'll be around 97 prisoners on each wing, 2 to 3 staff generally, if you're lucky. But sometimes it'll maybe only two staff. So it's a lot of hard work for the staff on there, the men and women that do work there, and it's a place I loved working. I started in around 2003. I was 24. I got into it. My friend, a couple of mates worked there. Mate Andy Barrow, Kev Graham, and a lad called Roy Gilmore, who sadly passed away not long ago. So they started working there. I was a civil servant. I worked in Birkenhead, Woodside, and I worked for the Child Support Agency, which was a tough job on its own. They started there in Manchester, and they loved it. So I thought, I'll give it a go. Something different, because I worked in offices, like working on computers.
Nothing worse than working in an office.
Yeah, so...
I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of people, that might be the best thing in the world to them, but...
Yeah.
I worked in an office for a few years, and it was one of the worst times in my life, sitting in the same 4 walls.
That's it, exactly. God. And as I say, chasing non-resident parents up for money for not paying for the kids.
You horrible man.
I know, it was horrible. Ringing up and saying to some fella...
That was your first crime, there.
Yeah, ringing up and saying you got 20 grand worth of arrears, how do you want to pay this? So that was a bit of what I did, and I applied for getting a job in Forest Bank. I thought, you think it's all going to be glamorous and working in the jail, and 24, you don't really know much. So I got the interview, and Roy, my mate, actually did it, because I used to play football with him. So he hooked me up with the interview, and he basically got me through it and made sure I passed. So I started working there in 2003, I think it was, in December 2003, and you do like 9 weeks of training. We did like it in an army, a TA army base. So you do like 9 weeks, and I think there was about 16 of us on the course. Met a lot of people that, good friends over the years that are still there. Actually, now I just thought to mention a lad called Tony Pick, and I used to work. He started with me, and unfortunately, the last couple of days, I found out Tony passed away suddenly. So thoughts with him and his family and whatnot. Yeah. He's a lovely fella, really quiet lad, but really such a nice lad. And it was shocking to hear about him, and as I say, it must be terrible for his family and colleagues that are still there with him. So started there, did 9 weeks training.
Very quick. Obviously, we're getting to the big issues with Forest Bank later on, but what was the training like? Was that thorough? Was that done properly?
Yeah,
happy with the training?
You don't really know anything really, because you just go in there and you think, what's jail? You see what you see in the films, don't you, and the telly and whatnot. And you think, it's going to be, it's going to be this, and you have this in your head. But it was a lot of classroom work. And it's still the same now, from when I left a couple of years ago now. But you have a lot of what we call shadowing, which is basically you go onto the wings.
Yeah, very familiar with that.
Yeah, you go onto the wings in your uniform, but you've got no authority at all because you've not passed. So all you're doing is basically standing there and observing.
I bet that makes you feel a bit like a target as well, knowing that you've got no power.
Yeah, it's
no
terrible.
Matter what happens.
It's terrible. You've got to ask to go to the toilet because you've got no keys. Everything's locked, so the staff toilets are locked. So if you're the officer, and can you open the toilet for me to have a wee? So prisoners can see that, and as soon as they see the new staff, they're on you straight away. So you can imagine walking onto a landing, 97 prisoners, some of them have been in and out of jail all their life. They know more than you'll ever know.
Big shoulders, and you're like, "Can I go for a wee, please?"
Yeah, it's terrible, So they're on you straight away. So the first thing they'll ask you where you're from, and then they'll go from there, and they'll try and test you out. They'll take the piss out of you. They'll say, "What's that on your shoes?" So you look at your shoes.
Hello, sailor.
Elvis, and then everyone's laughing at you, and you're like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" But it's testing, So, but you learn the most things off your shadowing. And what used to happen, you'd get thrown on a wing without keys, and then one day you'd work on F wing, one way you'd work on B wing or whatever. And each sort of wing had slightly different roles. Some were young offenders wing, some was the basic wing, which we'll talk about later. Some was the induction wing, and then you've got your, what we call them, your sex offenders or a wing, which is slightly different as well. So you get a feel of what sort of wing you like, or what the prisoners are like, or how well it's run really. Because although you think the jail should run all the same, you got some good staff, some bad staff, and a lot of times the staff are so busy within a private jail, you're running about doing what they need to do, so they haven't really got time to take you under your wing and say, "Look, this is what you should be doing," or they can't be asked because
they've got their job to get on
with.
And you're there to watch.
And if you don't seem interested enough or whatever, they'll just forget, can't be bothered with him or her. So it's difficult finding your feet, but your shadowing's where you really sort of you learn the sort of what the job's about. But the hardest part is the regimes of the jail, and because every day, once you get in the swing of things, of knowing when and what happens during the times of the day, then that's the hardest part. So you'll know what time unlock is, what time they've got to be after breakfast, what time they've got to be locked up again, what time they've got to be let out again for work, what time they come back from work, what time exercise is, what time they come back from exercise. Then you run into dinner times, you get them all out, fed, back in behind the doors again. And that's just a process, and it's learning that really. That's the hardest part. But then, your 9 weeks training, you learn everything. You get told so much, but it just goes in one ear out the other.
Well, nothing prepares you like doing the job.
Yeah, exactly, And there's a lot to take in, because although you think jails, it's all about locking the door and putting people behind the doors and whatever, and you see the violence and you see the issues and whatnot, but a lot of it is, other things. You're a counsellor half the time, because lads have got issues. Lads want to see the families, and they've got issues with the house, they've got issues with the bills, who's paying the bills when they're in, how do they send the credit cards out to the families because they've been arrested.
I think it's very easy for people on the outside to assume it's just a job, but when you're in there, and it becomes very personalised, I'd imagine, for you.
Yeah, it
you're
is.
in there with real people, with real issues like yourself, when you go out at the end of the day.
Well, that's it, and as I say, once you're on a wing, but normally you're working on your wing every day. It's not like, you're a B-wing officer, so B-wing, so you come on at 6:30 in the morning, and then if you're working an A shift, what it's called, so it's like a 14-hour day. So you'll start at 6:30, and you'll unlock at 7 o'clock, and then you're locking up at 8:15 or 8 o'clock, wherever it is now. So you've got a 14-hour day. You lock someone up, you'll say goodnight to them, and then you go home, you get your head down, you go to sleep, you've got to be up again to unlock again. So you're locking them up, and then you're unlocking them. So you get used to your lads on your wings, and you don't build relationships up per se, but you do.
Yeah, you build a rapport with them.
Yeah, because you're on there every day with them. I mean, some people you just don't get on with. It's just fact. Staff as well as prisoners, but you get to notice them. And I know people go, "Oh, the prisoners or whatever. They've done what they've done." But they have done what they've done. But some lads are in there, they're spot on. And you get used to them, and they'll talk about your family, they'll ask about you, because when you first start, they said don't tell anybody anything about yourself, because they'll use it. Because Forest Bank, with it being a Cat B jail local, Their job is to house all the local courts, so you get the same prisoners in. I'll see the same prisoners in all over the years, come and go, come and go, come and go. And a lot of these lads, the staff as well, I didn't have it because I lived on the Wirral at the time. But these lads are living in the same streets, same areas as the staff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, a lad could land up on your wing and he lives around the corner from you.
Yeah.
All right, you know, and you're like, oh, fucking hell. So you have to report that kind of thing. You've got to report if you know somebody. And if you know where you live or you went to the same school. So it can be quite hard because they know your family and whatever. And
no escape from that kind of job, really.
No. But as I say, most of the lads who don't know you, they'll just go, oh, you know, and just because all they want to do is go through the jail. They don't want to cause any issues. It's the lads that are in there and they're trying to make money being in prison with contraband and drugs and whatever, or mobile phones, and they will try and put pressure on you. And as I say, from when you first start, that's some lads will test you. You know, they'll ask you where you're from. They'll ask you, you know, do you want to earn some extra money and whatnot? Bring me some phones in, or bring me some drugs in, or bring me some tobacco in, or whatever. So it's hard to get that sort of basic of your standards and be strong enough to say no straight away, because you know it is hard, especially if you know where you live or you know people that you know. So I did that. Did the training for 9 weeks, and then I think I must have passed in something like January, I think, or February. I started work. I picked A wing to work, because the staff on there were really good. There was a woman called Marie Dernan who was a senior. There was a few other people. There's too many to mention. Pete Siddle, Neil Wood. There was loads of really good staff. So I thought, I like this wing. So I asked to go onto that wing, and it was young offenders as well. Some of it. So I think A1 was young offenders and A2 was adults. And young offenders are funny. Do you know what I mean? Totally different to adults. 18-year-olds to 21-year-old lads thinking of gangbangers and whatnot. So the totally, you can deal with the young offenders totally different. You can deal with adults, you can have a laugh with them, and you can, you know, take the piss out of them, and they're not as crafty as, they've not got that craftiness to them as adults. As I say, if young offenders are arguing over pool or whatever, they'll just have a fight straight away right in front of you. You know, you stop in fights non-stop, they'll just wrap a pool cue around someone's head or whatever. But whereas adults, they'll organise it later on, they'll see where the staff are, and they'll have like
more wised up to how things need to be done.
Because there's only 3 of you on a wing, staff-wise, so if you're busy doing whatever you're doing, and then there's one of you walking around the landing, you can't be eyes everywhere, and you're busy. So the lads will know, right, you know, Officer Albertsen's down that end, let's go into this cell and beat this lad up or whatever. So, but the young offenders, I think, are funny. So they'll, you know, you're busy non-stop with them, really. So I started with them. And I loved it. I loved the job. It's difficult though. It does take a long time to get used to it, to integrate. You know, because it's hard.
What was the first sort of week or two like after your training? Because like we said before, nothing prepares you for the job like doing the actual job.
Yeah.
What was it like going from shadowing to right now I have to act?
Oh, it's bad. It's totally different. Once you get your keys on that day, I think I passed on the Friday, and I think I was on shift on the Sunday. And at the time, I think the jail wasn't as big as it was now. So I think there was 76 prisoners to every staff member. But at that time, we only had 2 members of staff. So it was 2 staff to. I worked on A2 at the start. Downstairs, they had 2 plus a senior officer. So you had 3 downstairs and 2 upstairs. So I was working with a colleague. He's busy or she's busy because she's got some experience, however long, and I'm brand new.
Yep.
Sometimes you can be put on with both of you brand new. So you can be given 2 sets of keys, me and somebody else. You just come off the course, right? You're on that wing today. You haven't got a fucking clue what you're doing.
Yeah. No one to look through for an exam.
No, so you're basically just trying to remember, and obviously you've got a radio. So when you're in the morning, you get your keys, you get your radio, you sign on. Every aspect of the jail has got a different call sign. So if I'm working on Alpha 1, then I'm working. Officer Albertsen's working on Alpha 1. Please can have a call sign. So they'll say, right, you're Alpha 1 or Alpha 2 or whatever it is. So you've got to listen to your radio all the time, so you get guidance, right? Prepare for exercise or prepare for this. But it doesn't prepare you for anything. No. So as soon as you're on, you know, you're on and you've got keys. And to be fair, a lot of the prisoners will help you out. They'll say, right, you know, you've got to be doing this or you've got to be doing that. So it's basically you're just learning and trying not to fuck up, which you do. Everybody does. They'll have your eyes out, especially like canteen day, because you're allowed to buy canteens and you've got to do canteens. You give them out, they make sure you sign it, and then they'll give you a receipt, and then they'll fuck off or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you turn your back, a canteen will go. So then you're in. So you're gonna make mistakes. It's just part of the job. That's how it is. And I made tons of mistakes.
I imagine in your first few weeks as well, there's a lot of trying to trip you up as well, knowing you're the new lad.
Definitely. And it's like each wing will have sort of cleaners. So you'll have your respected lads. So you'll have your lads who work on the serve, doing your food. And then the lads who clean the wing for you. So really you sort of rely on them to sort of help you out. But then you'll have lads, well, there's a cleaner in cell 16, he's a mate, can you get him out to help out? So you don't know any better. So sometimes you get half your wing out, which you shouldn't have. So then someone like your senior will come on and go, why is there so many people out? And you go, well, he's not a cleaner. So it's just a learning process. They'll have you off one day and then you got to learn and go. It's about not making the same mistake too many times. So yeah, it's difficult. So yeah, it takes a long time to sort of, a lot of people left, off my course. Didn't take long at all. They just found it too hard, and they just went back to their old jobs, or they'd give it a try, but it wasn't for them. They just took too much, the abuse, or took it to heart, or whatever.
So on that, when was the first moment you sort of realised this isn't right, this isn't being run correctly?
At the time, the jail was all right. The problems came later on in Forest Bank in years to come, really. I mean, it was difficult. The staffing's always been terrible in private prisons. There's just not enough staff. And because it's run, basically the Sodexo at the time, it's the same company, but it was called UKDS and Calix. They had a couple of name changes. But they basically sign a contract and say to the government, right, this is what we promise. We have a 15-year contract. We promise to regimes of the jail will be run properly, we'll have a set amount of violence we're allowed, kind of thing, so many major incidents, but we'll make sure the running of the jail happens. We'll have so many staff all the time there, but it's run, a lot less staffing than public prisons. So the staffing was always an issue. There was never enough staff when I started. You never got a dinner break. There just wasn't enough staff, and so they were always recruiting more staff all the time. So there was courses and courses, but the staff retention, you just couldn't keep them because they weren't paying enough. Or the staff weren't being supported by the management. So I started off, and as I say, I worked on the wings, and I just have struggled for a while, a good while. The problem with what I had a major incident happen to me when I was only there, like a couple of months. And basically what happens, if you're not working on your wing, you get detailed other areas of the jail. One of these is called general duties, which you can do anything really. You're just ready to run to any incident that happens. You hear a personal alarm on your radio, and you run to it, or there's an incident, and you're there for the shift manager to use however they want. And a lot of that is a case of you go on what we call escorts, which is you're taking prisoners outside of the jail to different places. Majority of the time it's hospital appointments, because obviously people have still got illnesses when they're in there, and they've still got to go for x-rays or whatever, or if they've got cancer or they've got just illness, you know what I mean? So
life goes on while you're in there.
Yeah. So I mean, they have a healthcare department in there, and a lot of the stuff they do in-house anyway. But there are times they don't have any facilities to x-ray people. We didn't at the time. So you have to go to hospital, or you've got to go to a funeral or something like that. You've got to take people out. So one day, this was my first escort, I got instructed to go and get a lad, and he was going to Salford Royal. He broke his hand, or suspected broken hand, like called Neil Brennan. And he was only a young offender, he was only 21, but he was quite a handy lad. Apparently he's quite a bit of a reputation on the outs, he had a bit of money. So I was taking him out. Me and my friend Andy, who used to live around here, Andy Barrow, he'd been in the Forest Bank a while, a couple of years. So we took him out. I was handcuffed to him, and basically what happens is prisoners get handcuffed, and then another cuff applied, which is applied to me then. Every prisoner, when they go out, they'll have an escort bag, which has a mobile phone, information on the prisoner, where he lives, description, blah, 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 extra sets of cuffs and whatnot, for what you need when you go out to hospital. So I was cuffed to him, and we were waiting to go out to hospital. We were in the reception area, and I was cuffed to him, and his leg was shaking. And I was like, "What's up with you?" He said, "Oh, the cuffs are cold." And I was like, "All right." I didn't think anything of it. First escort, I didn't know what really. Gets in a taxi, which we use taxis, funnily enough, which people might not know, but you use taxis to take prisoners out. So there's a local taxi firm, which you think prisoners would be dangerous prisoners were housing. You'd think you got your own vehicle, with blacked out windows or whatever. So we were in a transit taxi. Me and Andy took him out. I sat behind the driver, and he was in front of me, so he was sort of boxed in. We left the jail. And Forest Bank is actually built on it's like a park, like a wildlife park, or it's got a big lake behind it and stuff. People go to walk the dogs, so it's quite off. When you come off the main road, it's quite hidden away.
Yeah, I remember you actually took me
Yeah,
past
that's right.
there.
Yeah. When we were working down here, weren't we?
And I didn't know where we were going until we were at the front entrance. It is.
Yeah, it's
tucked
quite
away.
Yeah. So we come out again. This lad's leg was shaking. I was like, "You all right?" He went, yeah, I'm all right. Hindsight's, looking back now, and so as we come out the jail, he come out the whatchamacallit,
The automatic gate.
Yeah, the gate. So you come out, and then the barrier comes up, and then you go.
Probably see my hand flying across the screen.
But I was sat backwards. I was going backwards, so I could see what was coming. Out the back of the car, and then next minute, I see this 4x4 speed up like a Jeep thing. So I was like, "That's going to be fucking quick." So as it comes past me, I can see balaclavas.
Is that when the nerves first started to
That's
set
when
in?
my arse went, yeah. So I was like, and when you say, "Oh, your life slows down with a major incident," it actually did, and I was thinking, "No, this got to be a drill. It's got to be some, training." So I saw the balaclavas, and I thought, "Oh no," and everything slowed down. I thought I'm going to get killed. I think I started off on like 17 grand a year. I think it was. I think I'm going to get killed here for 17 grand. Yeah.
Sounds like a job. I know that.
yeah. So it came past me, slid in, put that taxi to a halt. Next minute, the lad, the passenger comes out, balaclava, see the gun in his hand. So that was it. Then I was just, oh no. So started banging on the window, big crack in the transit on the side door, on the sliding door. Door opens, go to my face, let him go. So as you can imagine,
let him go.
But Andy had the keys, so he was the senior. He was the supervising officer. So one has the keys, one has the you're cuffed. So I had no say in it. I was like, he's got the cuffs, kind of thing. He got the keys.
Take him, you want.
So the gun was going to Andy's head, going to my head. So I managed to get Brennan round to give him Andy a chance of getting the cuffs off quick. Obviously, I feel sorry for Andy because so the cuffs are quite difficult anyway. Sometimes at the best of times,
especially when your hands are rattling.
Yeah, so it was over. Don't be wrong, it was over in a matter of a minute or whatever. But obviously, it's like what's going on there, and then you sort of like, what do we do now? So like he gets off, the car speeds off, bam, gone. We've got to go back to the jail then. So in your escort bag, you've got a phone. So Andy rang the police we've just been held up gunpoint, taken prisoner, blah blah blah. You got your escort pack with all the info. So the taxi drivers, what do we do? So like drive back to the jail. It was only around the corner, where we'd seen. So we went back to the jail. I ran into the sort of gatehouse, which is called where all where the staff come into work and whatnot. Runs in, throw my hand up where the cuff was, where the cuff is. He's just escaped, and then all shit, hell broke loose then.
I imagine it's something you can't really be trained for.
No.
Unless you watch Fast and Furious.
That's it, and it was just like, has that just happened to me?
Yeah.
It's just like, first time I've ever been out on an escort. I think I could have been nearly killed or whatever.
Waiting to wake up at any minute.
Yeah. So all the managers come out then, and they all come out as soon as it went over the radio. Something's happened. All the managers ran out. Me and Andy stood outside with the taxi driver.
I hope he got a good tip, the taxi driver.
God, the poor lad, I think he pissed himself. So apparently the rumour was he did. So they all ran out, got the escort pack with all the information of the prisoner. They all ran back in and just left us, stood outside. So me, Andy and the taxi driver were like, well, so the taxi driver, I said, just park your cab there. So we parked his cab, we got out, like closed the door, and then the window fell in where he'd smashed it with the butt of the gun. So yeah, so then that was it then. So we went upstairs, spoke to some of the managers, and I didn't know anybody. I'd only been there a matter of weeks, so I didn't really know any of the senior management team. So they were all like, yeah, you know, what a good story that is, what an excellent story. I was like, you're having a laugh.
Lucky man.
Exactly, yeah. So I was like, oh God. So they were like, well, you go home now and then come back in shift tomorrow. So we the police took all our like, you know, statements and whatnot, and then they were asking because they thought we may have been involved getting him out and whatnot. And I said, well, I didn't know the lad, you know, my first escort, so it was fine. They took our statements and whatnot. So then we went home. Andy lived down in Brighton at the time. So we went home and all that, and came back the next day. And we just sat there around for like half an hour, well, all the morning, waiting for the police to come in so we could sign the statements. Management didn't say anything to us, how are you, or didn't.
No.
Just...
Well, you had 12 hours to recover, mate.
Exactly, yeah.
Should be fine.
Yeah. So, so that was it. Eventually the police came in, signed the statements and what, and then we went off, and then I went off I come back, I think I had about a few days off, and then I came back in. And then my head went, because I was walking down the landings on the wing and I was getting abuse because the word travels fast, and I was on it like, and he was like, should have blown your head off, and I was just getting no support at all. So I went on the sick. Andy went on because his head had fell off a little bit. Just a lack of support. It was just like, you know what I mean? Nobody was helping us or giving us any help or counselling or anything.
Yeah.
Not that you can counsel that kind of thing, it's just what happened.
No, but it also shouldn't be expected for that to be treated as just part of the job, because it's not.
Yeah, no, and exactly, and especially, as I say, using taxis and whatnot, it was a bit of, you think, well, how was that safe, you know, and it was a kind of, you know, how was that, you know, and eventually, after a while, Andy never came back. I think he left not long after. He went to HMP Risley instead. But I went on nights for a bit, and then I came back. I actually sued them in the end, because I thought, you know what, you know, it's not safe to take, you know, having staff, because basically once you leave the jail, you've got a mobile phone and that's it. Anything can happen to you.
It's a surprise that kind of thing hasn't happened more.
Exactly. It was one of the I think it was one of the first ones in the country. It hadn't happened for a long time, and maybe when you go into court, you know, they're called the sweat boxes, the transit vehicles that they use, they're called sweat boxes, well, for a point of a familiar term, but you can't see in them. You can't see, they just come and go at the jail. When you're using taxis, you can see, you know, if so basically
just exposed to the
this lad had broken his hand, smashed his hand against the wall, knew he was going to get took out to hospital, had a mobile phone somewhere, rang his mates and said, listen, wait for me there, I'm going to be coming out. You just to sit and duck. So I actually sued them. I went to a solicitor and said, listen, you know, can we do anything about it? I said, because I feel like it should be compensated somehow. Because it was a bit of a traumatic time or whatever. Anyway, they sued them under the Health and Safety at Work Act, because under the legislation you're supposed to provide a safe place of work for anybody to work wherever they work. Using taxis isn't a safe place to be taking violent prisoners. So they actually admitted straight away once I'd put it in. But I got a couple of grand. I didn't get major money because you've only got a certain amount of time to get it in over the statutory thingies. So I actually sued them for that, and they paid out. But it didn't stop anything. They're still using taxis now.
Yeah.
So nothing's changed. They're still putting people's sort of livelihoods at risk, because they've had a couple of instances. I think about a year, 18 months ago, a prisoner, they actually, again, a taxi got took out, and they got the wrong taxi this time. They were trying to get a lad out. He was quite a big player, a drug dealer. But they actually stopped the taxi, and it was two probation workers taking a prisoner who had just been released to a hostel.
Oh.
So they got the wrong one, but there's still potential there for it, for that kind of stuff to be happening. But it's private prisons, but even public prisons they do the same. So I had a bit of a crazy start, really. So I had that, and as I say, I went on to work on nights for a little while.
And was that your choice?
Yeah, I just wanted to get away from off the wings, because as I say, it was getting too much. As I say, I was working with another member of staff, so there's only two of you working on the wing, and so I just thought, I'll get out the way a little bit, let it calm down, let it, something else to come up, another story to come up, and then I'll go back on days. So that's what I did, and I went back on days then.
And did it work?
Yeah. Something after a couple of months, I was still struggling with the job because I still didn't know what I was doing and it was still difficult. But then after a couple of months, it all sort of clicked. Everything clicked into place, and I knew what I was doing. I went to work with the YOs, the young offenders, and that everything sort of clicked into place for me. And then I started enjoying it, and I knew what I was doing. So there, I sort of cut a line under it of that really, and then just progressed, and then started enjoying the job. Working with the young offenders was brilliant. You know what I mean? They were just so funny, just proper gangbangers. I mean, at the time there was a lot of gang issues with the Gooch gang, Albertsen gang they're called. So we were always, all the young offenders, unless we didn't have the beds, they all had to go under one wing. You couldn't move them around the jail because the young offenders can't share a cell with an adult or whatever. So we'd have all the young offenders there, and sometimes it'd be carnage because you've got all these gang lads and all they want to do is, walk around and think they're 10 men and have a fight with everyone. Yeah. So you'd have to be on your game, but it was a good laugh. Really enjoyed working, learned a lot. And then I got a promotion. Well, I went from a senior officer's role. You have prison custody officer, and then you have a senior, and then you have higher than that. So I went for a senior's job, and I got it. And then I moved. Then I went into the security department for a while, which was different. You go into cells in the morning. You got to go into cells who lads who you think have got mobiles and drugs, who are running the wing and going and unlock, like waking them up at 6:30 in the morning, which isn't the best. Sometimes you get a lot of abuse. Yeah, you do, and there's a lot of use of force, and you're twisting lads up, or they don't want you in your cell, or obviously they've got stuff in the cell that they're not supposed to have, so they're trying to plug it or.
Yeah. Tell us about the use of force, because remember the first podcast you appeared on that I listened to, I wasn't familiar with what counts as a use of force.
Use of force.
So if I was to go, is that a use of force?
It can be, yeah. If use of force, you have a spontaneous use of force or you have a planned use of force. They're the main two. Well, they're the only two really. A spontaneous use of force is if a prisoner comes to you and you feel threatened. Now, every individual is different how they perceive to be a threat. You could coming into my personal space looking like you're getting headbutted. You think that's a threat to yourself, to your safety. So you've got to use use of force to get, to stop that threat. Now that I might just put my arm on your chest to get you away. I've still got to fill paperwork in because I've touched you. A use of force could be a breakaway technique. If someone comes to you are allowed to punch them to break away. Right? Because you think you're going to get assaulted, you can push them or punch them or whatever. As long as you can justify on your paperwork. And you follow the right procedures to say or because on the camera as well it's different. It could look, if you might feel threatened, but on the camera it might look like I've just assaulted you.
VAR, not a clear enough.
Exactly. I wish. God.
Well, his armpit was offside.
That's it. Yeah. So it's how it pertains to you and the level of threat. But as I say, if you're breaking a fight up between 4 or 5 lads, you've got to get in there, and it's a free for all kind of thing. Or you go into a cell to do a cell search, and a lad jumps off his bed threatening, then you think he's going to assault you, or you think he's going to try and put drugs. Say plug, it's secreting drugs or mobile phones or contraband in their anal area, so they put it up the bum. If you think they're trying to do that to stop them, then you've got to use force to do that. So that's a sort of spontaneous use of force. As long as I say every use of force, you've got to do paperwork, and it's got to be absolutely spot on. Because if you as a prisoner say I've been assaulted by me, then you've got to put in the paperwork that exactly what happened, if he's made threats, whatever. Because a lot of the job, unfortunately, you do get investigated because the prisoners.
I imagine there was a lot of instances of prisoners trying to trip you up in that sense.
Oh yeah, and when I first started it's weird because prisoners, they know the jail, you're going to get twisted up. It's just unfortunate, it happens. As years went by, the sort of the dynamics change of prisons, and then you were just getting investigated all the time because prisoners, you shouldn't put your hands on me. Well, unfortunately, that's part of life. If you misbehave and you're an idiot and you threaten somebody, use of force happens. As well as people just because they don't agree with it. If you come into my face or you assault me or whatever, a use of force is going to happen. So a lot of the use of force is a big, massive part of the job. You could use force 3 times in a day sometimes. It's just, if you're having a bad day, you could go into 3 cells doing cell searches and you end up fighting with all 3 of them.
Yeah.
3 times. It happens, unfortunately. The other use of force is a planned use of force. Whereas an Oscar one, when I was a shift manager, you're responsible for that use of force. So if I know a prisoner, say like he's got to go to another jail, he's refusing to get transferred, if you've got permission that you can use force from the other jail or from the governor that's in the jail at the time, say use force on him, it's fine. So you've got to have a 3-man team, a 3-person team. You've got to have someone on camera to video it all, and you've got to have a nurse there as well. And that's all got to be videotaped when you go into a cell. So you have a 3-man team, they're kitted up, we'll have the riot gear on, shield and whatnot. A nurse there to observe injuries and whatnot, and a camera, as I say, to make sure you're adhering to the rules and regulations of correct use of force. You're not going in there battering someone, because private prisons you don't have sticks, or in public prison you have you have sticks and pepper spray now that they have. In private prison we don't have any of that. So if you've got someone threatening you, or 2 lads threatening you, in public prisons you can get your stick out, get back.
You've got the advantage. You
haven't in private prison. All you've got is yourself. Do you know what I mean? And you could think you're the hardest man in the world, but you're not. You're not. So use of force. So you've got to have it regulated. So when you have a planned use of force, then you've got to go in. You give the prisoner, say, right, this is the rule. You're either going to getting transferred, or you go into the block segregation, we call it, because they've done something wrong. Are you going to walk or you're not? If they say no, then you click the door open, you let your staff go in with the shield, you get the prisoner onto the floor, you get your locks on, you CNR, and you're trained in all this anyway. And then if needs be, then I've got cuffs, I'll put cuffs on the prisoner and they'll get taken to where they need to go, whether that be on a bus, whether that be down to segregation or whatever. That's what you got to do. But that's a basic sort of look of use of force. And then you have CNR instructors as well, there, which they're trained in properly, supervising it properly, and they're brilliant. I worked with so many good ones over the years, so they're there to help you and to do that. But you've got other aspects, there's loads of things. You could be going in there, someone on a dirty protest, which you've seen them on the telly, basically they cover themselves in their own feces, the cell. So you've got to go in there.
Standard Saturday night for me.
yeah. So you've got to go in there, but you've got, obviously, if that's the case, you've got to be papered up. You have paper suits on, and you could end up. I've had to do it once on nights. You have to go in and fight with someone covered in their own feces. It's not the best job in the world. As well as if you've got to go in there and someone's self-harming, and a lot of times you've got to go to prevent self-harm, which is a big part of the job. So if somebody's got open wounds, they've been cutting themselves, or they've managed to set a ligature up to try and get them to hand themselves away, you've got to go in and prevent that. So there's so many different aspects, and it's difficult, and it's upsetting part of the job as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you see some things.
I imagine it's like a massive mental toll.
Yeah.
Seeing that kind of stuff day in, day out. And
some of the staff as well, as when I got to the job of supervising these, sometimes you'd use the same people all the time, because you knew they go in and they were good at it. And it don't have to be the biggest lads in the world, but if you've got a busy day on, you just want to do it quickly.
It's like selecting a lineup for a football game. You're going to use your best players regardless of how tired they are.
Yeah, and sometimes they say to you, look, Al, can you pick someone else now, because I've done 2.
Yeah, but business-wise for them, you're the best man, you're going in.
Exactly, because as well as the paperwork as well. So paperwork, once you do that and your adrenaline's going and you're all taut, because you use that a couple of minutes scrapping a cell, and then you've got to do the paperwork. So and then you've got to do all that but you've also got a wing to run and whatever.
Doesn't really benefit you to be good at that part of it.
No, it doesn't. Exactly, and I've seen, and the sad thing is, I've seen so many people lose their jobs over use of force because the paperwork wasn't spot on. Yeah. Or the management didn't back them up and thought, well, he always uses force, his name comes up all the time.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask you to explain that. So explain, I know you did in another podcast, how many times you can use force before that flags up and that then becomes an issue for you. But obviously that relates to you being selected more often than the lads who can't do that job properly.
Well, that's it, and that's the type of thing the management didn't comprehend and couldn't get round their heads. And there was a woman called Sonia Ebbs who's recently left, who's the worst part of Forest Bank, and she was just a horror. And she got to a position, got all her mates in, and I'll talk about it on another podcast and with other people. But as these use of force happened, and as prison progressed and whatnot, we had people that look at the stats, you know, of use of force. How many use of force have we used this month? And then you break that down. How many were spontaneous? How many were planned? And then they'll have a look and they'll say, well, officer, they'll say we make Daz, Officer Thorpe, he's used use of force 6 times this month. Why has he used 6 times? So then they'll look at that officer and go, he's a bit of a bad egg, he's using too much force.
Yeah,
well,
but he's been in 500 situations
exactly,
that month.
Because as an Oscar one, I will know that I'll ask Thorpe to do it, or whoever. They'll always use, and we'll have big lads, you know what I mean? Some big lads in there. So you know, if you're going into a lad, and every situation is different. If I've got a lad, and it's not always the case. You know, you could go into a cell and the lad's 5'3", wiry as anything, but you think, oh, we'll twist him up easy.
Yeah.
But you end up scrapping with him for ages. But when you go into a cell, if you've got a big lad who's got a bit of reputation, he's been on the steads, he's 18 stone, you're going to get your big lads in there, because it's only a small cell, 6 by whatever it is, 10 or whatever. So once 4 lads are fighting in there, there's not much room to go. You know what I mean? So you use horses for courses, really. But these lads then management were looking at these certain people and going, well, you can't use him this month because he's used too much force. Well, who am I supposed to use then? You know, I can't go in.
Just makes everyone's job more difficult.
Exactly. And you, as an orderly officer, you've got so much on you day, you just want to sort these situations out. And the worst thing in the world, it's funny because Forest Bank, all the jail, sort of the wings were off like a hexagon, A, B, C, all off. And then you had a big long main street. Off this main street was where we used to get the staff kitted up, and then you'd have a long walk with your shield so the prisoners can see you coming. You know what I mean? And someone's getting twisted up, so it'll be like that through the window. And don't be wrong, if you've got these jumpsuits that you put on, you see in like the films, they look the bollocks because they look all proper kitted up. Some of these they were like big boiler suits. Now if you've got some lads, I've had to get lads kitted up who were like 5'1". One lad called Santo Toluto, I remember having him kitted up. The suit was like, he looked like a baby in it, with a helmet on. So you're walking down thinking, this looks fucking stupid. Do you know what I mean? How are you going to try and twist some lad up? They'll laugh at you when you go, and you're just thinking, please walk, this lad, please don't fight with us today, because the staff have got to do this, ain't the greatest, do you know what I mean? This could be a while. So you try and get your bad lads. But so a lot of staff got stitched up and sacked because they got investigated and the sort of the management didn't look out for them, so they left, or they got sacked because the paperwork wasn't right or whatever, and they were only doing the job, which is hard when you see good staff sort of leave.
Yeah, sacked for being good at the job.
Yeah. So that was it. So I worked on A wing for a while, and then I got my seniors on B wing then, and I worked on there for probably about 6 years as a senior officer, and it was great. The wing I took over at the time, it was probably the worst wing in the jail. It was terrible. We had the worst prisoners on. It was just, we had bench staff. We had a couple of 3 or 4 got caught. One lad, Rob Hart, who was a Jamaican lad, and everyone knew he was bringing drugs in. Everybody knew it. He was always mates with the prisoners, and it was hard going on your shift every day knowing this lad was a bad apple. So working with him for a long time. He actually got caught under police surveillance coming out of a house in Manchester, and the police caught him. Drugs. A lad called Connolly, he got caught bringing mobile phones in. And there was another female member of staff. She was having a relationship, improper relationship with a prisoner. But once we sort of weeded all them out, and then we got loads of good new staff. And we had a really good team on there, and then the wing was brilliant. Worked with loads of good staff on there. So many people, for Peter Blasio, Princey, Swinburne, Tierney, Ingham. We had so many, Flathead, Carl Asprey, and it was a proper good wing, and it was dead well run. So I worked on there for like six years, and we had a great time on it. But again, you see some horrible things.
Yeah.
Whatever you can think of in prison environment.
Should mention as well, even though you said it was great, you're still dealing with the understaffing issue.
That was always that was always a daily thing, and occurrence. You just didn't have staff around the jail. But when you work on the wings and that's all your job is, you don't really think about the whole bigger picture of the jail.
You just make the best of the situation.
You just concentrate on your wing, making sure it's clean, making sure it's tidy, making sure the lads are doing what they're supposed to do, making sure the cells are clean. You know, you've got to check your cells every day, so you go around and you make sure that, I know it sounds stupid, you've got to make sure the windows are still there, the bars are still there, they're not tunneling out. You know, stupid as it sounds, but you've got to, they're called CFCs or LBBs. So you got to make sure and you take pride in your wing. You know, if staff come on or visitors come on, if they come onto your wing, then you want it to look good. So you take pride in your wing. And we had a cracking wing, but again, we had no staff. And then you're dealing with incidents, you know, self-harm incidents, and you've got people on what we call ACT book, which is self-harm books. You know, if you've got a vulnerable prisoner, and they don't want to be, you know, they obviously don't want to be in prison, so they self-harm, they cut themselves, they don't eat. So you've got to be wary of that. Do you know what I mean? And you do get, you know, who your lads are, and he's not been out for dinner today, or you know, you got to be a counsellor and that kind of thing. And then unfortunately, one day, probably one of the worst instances we had a lad die on the wing. He got killed in his cell on B2. I was the senior on that wing that day, and he was only, I should know his name, but his name's escaped me. I don't know, he was having an argument in the morning, and I remember one of the girls on the wing phoned me and said, "Oh, Princey," her name was, and she's still there actually, and she rang and said, "Oh, lads, it's a bit of a weird atmosphere on the wing." So I was like, "All right," I said, "You know, just keep an eye on it." A couple of lads were arguing, like called Telford and Pickering and Whittle, over something, tobacco or a fan. So I said, "All right, okay, so just keep your eye out, you know, make sure you're out of the office, make sure you're on the wing and visible. And if it goes off, obviously, you know, you just do what you got to do. If you got to put someone behind the cell door, you know, if you think they're going to kick off, right, you're going behind your door. Just keep your eye out." Could have been a couple of minutes, and then there was a code over the radio which is called a code blue, that means it's an unresponsive prisoner, whether either they're fitting or they took some drugs or whatever, or they've been found just unconscious or whatever. So I went upstairs because I was working on B1, it was B2, so I went up the back stair. Anyway, you could tell something was going on. There was a lad prone on the floor, covered in water, just lifeless. So I went over to him and we had to lock the wing down, and you got to make sure everyone's behind the cell doors and whatnot while we worked on this lad. I was like, "Why is he covered in water?" You know what I mean? And what had happened, they'd had an argument, him and his cellmate, with other two lads over a fan and some tobacco. Anyway, they've gone into the cell, they've hit this lad, and unfortunately, you could tell he was dead at the time. They'd gone too far after the coroners and whatnot. They broke his neck. But he was dead at the time, kind of thing. So we did all we could, and then he got into hospital, but he was pronounced.
And did we find out why he was covered in water?
When they battered him in the cell, they threw water over to wake him up because they realised he'd gone too far, and then they just dragged him out the cell and left him on the landing for us to find him. And again, it was a case of you've got to then deal with the ramifications of the investigation and whatnot, make sure the staff were doing what they were doing properly, and then the family came in to see his cell, and this lad had never been in jail before, and it was a case of he was just in the wrong cell with the wrong prisoner, and unfortunately he got hit the wrong way, which can happen, and these lads do. You know, the cells are small, and sometimes when they're in a fight or they're assaulting someone, they go too far, and this poor lad unfortunately paid the price for it. And then a couple of days later his family came in to see his cell, which was upsetting.
And what was that like for you, having to bring them in?
It was all right. I mean, as I say, it sounds weird because you know it's distressing and all that, but as an officer you just get hardened to it. You not make jokes of that particular incident, but if you see some mad things and you just try and make some levity out of it and make a joke out of it. Oh God, I can't believe that happened, and you laugh.
And you've got to have that level of humour, knowing who you can have that joke with to stay sane in that kind of
because
job.
if you say it to the wrong person, they'll report you and go, "You shouldn't have laughed." You know, there's a lot of that. But I ended up having to go to court for that, what we call coroner's court, which obviously an investigation wants to do the autopsy and whatnot. And then if you can be called, it was in Bolton. I've been there a few times giving evidence. But I actually had to go to Crown Court as well to give evidence, because the 3 lads that were involved, they got charged with murder initially, and then they got put down to manslaughter. So I was the officer on charge of that wing, so I got called to give evidence and background of the 3 prisoners involved and what happened on that day, as well as the Brennan one we forgot to talk about when he got held up. Actually, he got caught on the run about 18 months later for attempted murder when he was on the run.
Right.
So I had to give evidence on that, because he was admitting that he was admitting to the attempted murder, but not the escape. He said, "Oh, we didn't have anything to do with it," but my evidence to say he was ready, he was twitching and whatnot. Yeah. So I had to give evidence on that, and he actually, once I turned up, he actually went guilty on that. I think he ended up getting 16 years all in all. So that lad who died, so I had to give evidence in Crown Court, and the lad's actually only got, I think, 4 years for manslaughter, which is nothing, obviously.
No.
So that was a bad day. That was a bad day on shift. But things like that you see all the time. Well, not things like that, but self-harm, unfortunately, overdoses, and they can be distressing. Suicides, I've dealt with a couple of suicides and managed those situations, which aren't the greatest. And then you just have normal deaths in custody because they're old or whatever, and things, or they just get found in the cell, they've had a heart attack or whatever. So I worked on there for a while, and then I think 6 years I did, and then I went for a promotion as a manager. It was a manager's job came up, which I went for. I didn't get that, but then I got the opportunity to be what we call a shift manager, Oscar 1 or orderly officer, and I did that. And then basically that you're responsible for the whole jail. That's your job. So as soon as you come in the morning, you're responsible for the staffing.
Yeah.
Of the whole jail. Any incidents that happen, you deal with those. Everything really, from morning till noon, or when you end your shift, you're responsible for that day. And that was a great job. Love that. Loads of responsibility and all that, as I say. But again, it's a staff, and you've got no staff or whatever, so it's difficult, and every day was different. So I started that. I did that for 8 years. Again, dealt with any instance you can think of, hostages, incident heights when people climb up on the bars, barriers.
Yeah,
throw
and we
themselves
can make
off.
separate episodes as well.
Yeah.
Discussing each incident and giving a full breakdown of them, which will be interesting.
Yeah, because we don't want to go on too long with this first one, really. So I did that for about 8 years.
So after them 8 years, how long have you been there now? 14 years?
Yeah, 14 years, yeah. And then that's when I was a fool, was an idiot. I was a bit disillusioned with work and with whatever, with the staffing, with your busy days or whatever. And then I got stupid. What happened was there was an industries where the lads go to work every day. There's different places they work. They can work in the kitchens, education where they can get obviously qualified. They can learn to read or write or whatever the help they need, or education, get qualifications. And there's also an industries area, which there's like probably 8 to 10 workshops I think now, and each workshop is different, and they'll have contracts with suppliers. So it could be double glazing, making the double glazing fixtures, or they had loads of books in one, so they're doing stuff with them, packaging them up. And then there was like a Marshall Tufflex, it's called, like parts with like light sockets and things like that. And then they had another workshop, was the Timpsons one, which Timpsons do a lot of work with ex-prisoners and whatnot, like the key places and the shoes. They employ a lot of ex-prisoners and whatnot. And then this particular time they had a DVD shop, games and whatnot. And it was
games, console, Xbox,
PlayStation 5, 4 or whatever they are, and DS's and whatnot. Yeah. And for some reason, it was just, we got this contract with Morrison's, I think it was, and then all these DVDs just kept appearing. We go into prisoner cells, and you're like, where did they get these DVDs from? Because they'd gone to work and they'd hide them or whatever, and they weren't getting searched properly.
So what was the prisoners' role in there? What were they actually doing with the games? Were they packaging them?
They were coming in like massive pallets, and I think, I still to this day don't know what the actual reason for it was, or what they were doing. They were sort of packaged, so they get a pallet of like all different games and Blu-rays, and then they package them up in like, block them all together, I think they send them on, but I don't get why. At first they had a crappy warehouse at first, and what they were doing, they were all these DVDs brand new, but they were taking them out the wrappers. You know, the CDs, they were putting them like a mulch, you know, like mulching it and making it into some product, like they were like breaking it all down, just getting rid of them. So lads used to, kind of thing. So lads used to go in there. I knew lads would go in there staff wise and take them home, you know, DVDs for the kids, because they were just getting.
Yeah. But then it was also, after that, it was brand new.
Brand spanking new ones, yeah.
Like the latest games out.
Yeah, latest games, say like the newest FIFA, newest Battleground or something like that.
Battlefield.
Yeah, that's the one. Anything you can think of.
That's why I'm here.
Exactly, yeah. So they had all them, but they had like box sets of Game of Thrones, Star Wars, you know, like these were like 80 quid box sets kind of thing. And I knew people were doing it. I knew people were doing it because people had actually, later on in time, the actual security manager.
Yeah. And was it just games, or was it consoles as well?
No, there was not consoles, but there was pads, you know, the pads.
Accessories and stuff like that as well, which are still 40-50 quid a pop.
Exactly, yeah. And then they had, you know, the cards, the vouchers.
Oh yeah.
You know, so
the points cards, like have the codes on.
For 40 quid, like the 40 quid, so you can download the game or whatever. So you had boxes and boxes and boxes of those. Yeah. Thousands of them.
Yeah, because at the time they would have come in the foam boxes with then the cardboard on, and it's a physical card, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you can scratch it, get the code, and that's yours.
So we were finding them in cells and whatnot, because then the prisoners were sending out to the families or whatever. So I was like, where's this coming from? So then I realised then this big workshop was there. And as I say, I knew the security manager was taking stuff. He ended up getting arrested. This is how I got arrested, because he threw my name in once he got arrested. So yeah, stupidly, I started taking them home like an idiot. So I ended up selling them on eBay.
Yeah.
So I don't even know why I started, but I did. I was taking them a couple at a time, putting them on eBay, a couple of extra quid in your back pocket.
Because I remember you said in another podcast you started off very small, just taking one, when it was something you thought, oh, that's a bit interesting, I'll take that.
Yeah, or just like Archie.
Which is how most habits start.
Yeah, and so it was a kind of taking a game or FIFA or giving it to your mate or selling it on eBay and getting... So then you're thinking, this is easy. Yeah. And knowing what I knew the security manager was doing it, I just thought...
Yeah. And what was your reaction the first time you clocked him doing it?
Well, I just knew he was doing it.
So you didn't actually see it, but you...
Yeah, and then I'd see him down there, because I had to do like a key check every day, so then you'd have to make... Sometimes, like after a certain time of day, people would go home, but sometimes I'd have to check every night to see where the keys, you know, every key was accountable. And sometimes some of the industry staff was still there and hadn't told me they were still there, so I had to go down. So I just go in there and check to see who was there before I went to do my key check. So this lad Carl, I say, security manager. So I knew he was doing taking games and selling them on eBay. So I thought, if he's doing it and no one cares, and the jail's that bad and there's no staff and I'm running around like a tit, I thought, do you know what, I'll start taking stuff. An idiot, not myself to blame. I can't blame anybody else. That's just a decision I took stupidly. So I started taking, and then you think, oh, this is easy. Yeah. So and then every sort of like you're getting money into your bank and you're getting used to it.
Yeah.
And then you think no harm's getting done. You know, the security manager's doing it. I'll do it, and you know, because who doesn't like money?
Yeah.
Stupidly, and I just got greedy and I just got greedy and stupid.
And do you think that's why you were unfortunate enough, because there must have been thousands of people doing the same thing? If you think about all the private prisons and all this project going on, there's a lot of people who wouldn't have got caught doing that.
Oh yeah.
Do you think if you hadn't become a bit greedy with it, would you have got caught?
Probably not. I mean, I know there was people doing it, don't be wrong, and as I say, I knew what other people were doing, not on the level that I was, but I knew people were taking stuff, and I know people that are still there that did it. But yeah, it was a case of when the security manager got arrested, he got arrested in the summer, and it took a year for me to get arrested. But when he got caught, and he knew what I knew, he knew what I was doing it as well as he was doing it. But we had nothing to do with each other, but I knew he was doing it, which I spoke about on other podcasts. So as soon as he got arrested, I thought, I'm going to get arrested.
Yeah.
I just thought he's the type of lad, because he was horrible. He was all right as a person in work, but he'd sell you out. He got to his position of security manager, he worked for me as an officer. He'd gone through just by being a backstabber and getting a brown nose and getting to where he was. So I knew he'd throw other people under the bus for it, and that's what he did. There was a couple of us that he threw under the bus, but it took a year for that to happen. So in the end, it was like mobile phone records and stuff that the police took off him, and I think he threw my name in. So yeah, if I was low level and I'd only do it and took a little bit, I don't think the police would have been interested. But because I took so much over the time, and I just got greedy, and it was over like a year, 18 months that I was taking all these games, and it was just too easy. You know, I'd come into work, I'd do my job, I wouldn't, you know, I'd always be a good officer, I'd always do my job to the best of my ability, but at the end of the day, when everyone had gone home, I'd go into the workshop, fill my bag with games or whatever, and then go home.
And not to excuse it, but I don't think there's many people who could listen and honestly say they wouldn't take advantage in the same situation.
Yeah, I'm sure people
like I say,
would.
not to excuse it.
No, exactly, and it was a kind of thing that it was that easy, and I liken it to like it was like having a cash machine in there. Do you know what I mean? It was like I could take
it'd be hard not to.
Yeah, I mean, don't be wrong. As I say, there's no excuse for it, and a lot of people didn't have that. You know, I probably had the same opportunities as me to do it, but didn't. And then, you know, I was just weak, and I did, because I thought, oh, it's just no one's looking at it, because the amount of games that were going missing, and I'm thinking, isn't anybody monitoring this? And obviously because the security manager was doing it himself. But I should have been, you know, I was weak and I shouldn't have done it. So that once he got arrested, it was like a year. Carried on with my job and whatnot, to the best of my ability, but it was always in the back of my mind, and every time I noticed he was going to court, his case kept getting adjourned, and I was just thinking, just, you know, go to jail and that and be done with it. Because I wasn't sociable with him outside of work or anyone really. I was just kept myself to myself in there. And in that day, I was on shift, and then Debbie Ingham came down. She was a security senior that I'd worked with on B Wing, and she said, "Look, you need to come up to the office." And I was like, "Right, okay." And I could see in her face there was something. And she said, "I think it's got something to do with Byron. There's Byron's police here." So then that was it. Then I knew. So I gave my keys and radio to somebody, Howard, my mate, who's equivalent to me. And then I went up there, and then that was the police were there. I said, "You know, we're investigating a Carl Byron, you know, theft at Forest Bank. You were placed under arrest." And so that was it then. And then I got put in the back of a van. Sonia Ebbs, who's like the security above Byron, she was the ops manager, you know, and she made a point of putting me in the back of a van in front of all the prison population coming to work and the staff, instead of doing it quietly, which she could have. So I got put in a van. Two of the colleagues got arrested with me, who had nothing to, I didn't know they were doing it at all. They got arrested the same. They were names put in by this lad. So I got put in the back of a van, and then I got questioned at the police station, and that was it really. So I admitted everything straight away. They asked me what I'd done, and I just told them, which I couldn't do, you know, because they gave me the bank accounts, and how can you explain the amount of money that had gone in?
And it's worth mentioning, because you did mention on another podcast, but you did try and take precautions with it, didn't you? I remember you saying you didn't just take it to one place when you were selling these games.
No. I'd go to different places, or Liverpool, Birkenhead, Manchester, Oldham. I'd go to different shops and sell them. But then because it was getting to be, you know, you don't want to see your face recognised all the time. So then I was selling them online then to the company called CX. Sex or Sec, I don't even know what it's called. So I was doing them. So I was just sending them in packaging, you know, and then sending them, and then they send you the money through. But that's how I did it. I admitted, I said, this is what I've done, and they were asking.
A massive paper trail.
Exactly. How are you going to explain that? And then the other two lads then who got arrested, they went no comment kind of thing. So the police kept them there for like God knows how long. Whereas I just wanted to get home. I was living in Manchester with my girlfriend at the time, and she didn't know anything about it. So I needed to get back and explain to her. So I just admitted, said, yeah, this is what I've done. I was an idiot, and the police were happy. You know, and just said, don't try and be as hard on yourself. You know, it's just one of them. We were an idiot, but you've done what you've done. You can't go back now. So obviously then I'd lost my job. dragged it out for a couple of months because I was suspended still, pending investigation. And then I didn't hear anything then for a year. Didn't hear anything from the police. I'd split up my girlfriend in February, obviously because I lost my job and things were. I was a bit of an idiot and I was worrying about everything and the situation. What I was going to do for a job, what I was going to do in the future, worrying about going to jail.
Yeah.
You know.
And even though when we were working together, I didn't know what the exact situation was. I knew you were waiting for your court hearing, and you didn't want to plan your future because you didn't know what that was going to be.
Exactly. So I couldn't. When I moved back, obviously I lived in Manchester in Oldham there, so I had everything there. So when I moved back to the Wirral, I'd been away for obviously my son was still in the Wirral and I'd seen him every day. I'd see him a couple of times a week and whatever. But all my friends and everything was there. So when I moved back here, I didn't know anyone. I had to move back to my mum's. But I couldn't. I was working with yourself because I just needed a job. But
and you didn't want to go into a career because you didn't know.
Yeah, and legal fees as well, solicitors' fees and whatnot. So, and as I say, it's embarrassing when I worked with you and they were saying, oh, what did you do? And I didn't want to say, oh, I was robbing. Do you know what I mean? Because it's embarrassing. It's not a thing you're proud of. So I just said I made up a use of force. I heard someone in use of force and they pressed charges and that was it. Because it just a cover story, just because I didn't want to. Yeah, and especially because I didn't want to get sacked. Because
it's a whole trust issue.
So once you say that once, and then you just leave it at that, and then people asking you, you tell the same story, just because you're a bit embarrassed about it. So I know it was a shock when you found out, and when obviously because I knew I was going to. I said to you because I was working with you for a long time.
Well, I actually, just to go back to that, I've never had this conversation. I found out before the news article actually came out, but I didn't mention it to you because I didn't want you to stress about the whole thing and oh shit, he knows kind of thing. But your first hearing in court when we were friends, I followed it online, and that's how I found out. But I thought I won't mention it. Let you go with it. Don't stress about it.
Yeah. Oh no, that's sound. As I say, because it's one of them things. You're not proud of it because people label you, you're a thief. And the hardest part of like leaving Forest Bank and that is because people, good mates that have known for built up relationships for years, they sort of just ostracise me. Do you know what I mean? And then you think, I'm not a bad. But when you're a prison officer, if someone brings drugs in as a colleague or phones and that, then he's a rat. How can you bring all that when we're trying to do a job, and how can I go into a cell with you?
It escalated all as well because it was in a prison. I think people do far worse every day, not in a prison. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And again, not to excuse it, but people do far worse, which is why when the news story came out, I remember I messaged you. A lot of the lads were saying, "Oh, he's from our job. He's a rat." I was like, "Hold on, I've seen you do worse things in work every day."
Yeah. Yeah, and it's disappointing, as I say.
Because it was in news and everything, it's escalated.
Yeah, it's disappointing because I say all these people that did look, I let them down. Do you know what I mean? Because you do have like a brotherhood in the jail kind of thing. Yeah. You back each other up. You go into a cell. You can back each other up. You're going to be backed up with different things.
The biggest part of your days with these people.
Every day, and as I say, for years and years. So then they question who's Albo, because I used to be called Albo by everyone. No one used to call me Paul, but they were like, I thought I knew him, but he was, he was taking games on. Was he bringing drugs in? And I understand that, but obviously I would never do that. As I say, all I did my job as best I could. I helped a lot of people out there. I was good at my job, but like an idiot. At the end of my shift, I was taking games and DVDs home like a knobhead, which again, I can only apologise to people for that. So that was the hardest thing, and not being able to say goodbye to people because I just got put in the back of a van and gone. And then I never.
So you get to explain yourself.
No,
as well.
I was never on I was never on Facebook because of the job. I was never on Twitter and Instagram. I was never on any of that. So I had a close sort of band of friends, and those friends did stick to. I did speak to a few people. Good friends that are still there, and they supported me and helped me out. Which I was in a bad place kind of thing. Once I split up and moved back this way, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. In my life, I worked in a nursery for like 4 months, working with little kiddies, just to get a job. And obviously I was working with you for the best part of a year, which was a good laugh. And you helped me out unbelievably, which you helped me out with doing this as well. So it was difficult, and then eventually, as time gone, then I went to court, because I went guilty straight away anyway.
So?
Yeah, so where were we? So eventually I got to court. I went a couple of times thinking I was going to get sentenced. Kept getting adjourned, and obviously COVID and whatnot. It was difficult. So I'd gone a couple of times with my bag because I just wanted it over with. And the problem is, well, I got Archie, my boy, like, and he didn't know anything about it. So I wanted to tell him eventually because I didn't want him, because he could, the options were to say you're moving away to do work.
Yeah.
But I didn't want him to think I'd left him.
Yeah.
So it was a case, do I tell him and prepare him for it? And then he'd worry and I don't go to, because there was a chance I wasn't going to get jail. There was a small chance I'd get a suspended sentence. So I spoke to his mum. She said, no, I'll tell him if the worst case scenario happens, because I was worried about him. He was 11, well, he's still 11, but he was going to secondary school this year, and obviously, you know, it's still a lot for him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because he knew I'd left the jail, but I just said I would left for whatever reason. I didn't give him the ins and outs of it. So in February I went with Paul, my mate, and so we were in the courtroom and whatnot. So you're thinking, oh, suspended sentence, please, that'd be nice. But I knew basically I was going to get.
Yeah, I remember your last day in work with me. You said, right, I'll see you.
Yeah,
down the road. As if you weren't come back, and I thought, he knows something here.
Yeah, well, I had to go off basis of because when the security manager Carl Barr and the other lad got arrested, they got 2 year 3 month. Obviously, he was higher up. He had a higher sort of role within the jail, so he had more responsibility. So
he manipulated the system far more.
Yeah. As I say, we'll go into it in another time. But he was sort of the benchmark. So I was thinking I'll probably get similar, but you know, I admitted it straight away. He didn't, so that's a third off your sentence straight away. And then it's really up to the judge. But you think the judge is going to have a history about you? You know, you write a letter saying, you know, what a mistake you made and all that. But basically, the judge just turned up and he doesn't know anything about you.
Yeah.
So
it's worth mentioning as well. I know you were told to write a letter about how it affected you, the waiting and the not knowing, because it did mentally affect you.
Yeah.
You were stressed, you didn't know what was going to happen, you couldn't get on with your life. It had a mental toll on you waiting, and I know it was your mistake, but the whole drawn-out process.
Well, it was 3 years from the actual me taking the games. It was a 3 year process of actually getting to the stage of doing my sentence.
Yeah.
So I'd already had the 3 years.
You'd had a 3 year sentence.
Yeah. And you know, not moving on with my life, I couldn't do that. So it was horrible. So it was bad, but the judge really didn't take anything into account really. He looked at he adjourned it once in the week before, and then because he wanted to hear about Byron and give the same sort of treatment and the same sort of sentence.
Yeah, that's the one I followed.
Right. Yeah. So you sat there in the dock and you're waiting, and you know, and he's telling you what a bad person you are, and you feel like crap, and he's saying, well, and he basically saying, you know, because I was worked in a prison, they look at it worse. You know, you're in Majesty's. He basically said, you know, you're stealing from the Queen.
Yeah.
So you're like, all right, yeah. And then, you know, you should have been a role model and blah, blah, blah. So you're thinking, well, you don't know me. You don't know what I was like in there. I was a good officer and whatnot. I just...
Yeah. But to them, that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, no. So then he it's weird that the way they work it, there's a sort of monetary level that they put it. If it's a certain amount over X amount, then they give you more time.
Right.
So I was separate to Paul, my colleague. I had nothing to do with him. Nothing at all. Didn't even know he was doing it. Same as me. But because we were they put us together in the same court, you know, like they treated us like we were in it together, but we weren't. So he was trying to put us in together, which we both took money, which would have put us above a certain threshold.
Right, yeah.
So it would have been an extra. So we were looking at each other going, we're going to get slammed here. So anyway, long story short, he gave me 50. We give us both 15 months. You know, you go into jail, you know you are. So I was like, all right, okay. So that's it then. 15 months. So you think, I'll take that. You know, you don't want to, but you know, because you know you're going to only do half of that anyway. Yeah. So that's 7 months. And obviously, your first time in, you get applicable for your tag, your HDC. So that's another 3 months off with a bit of luck if you get it.
Yeah. You're still looking at 3-4 months inside.
Yeah, 4 months inside. Yeah. So then obviously you get led down to the dock, and then you're into the holding cell then. So that's also when reality hits. You know what I mean? Your door goes closed, and you're thinking, what's going on here? So I knew we were going to get sent to Walton anyway, HMP Liverpool, because Paul's partner, Lindsay, still worked in the jail. She was still there, so she'd been told that they're going to look after us.
Yeah.
But put us in the block in Seg. because obviously we couldn't go on normal location because, you know, obviously once people find out ex-officers are there, it's not going to end well for you. So we got sent to Walton. So we arrived there, and you obviously get put in the sweat box and you get taken there and you're thinking this isn't going to be great, like.
Yeah.
Got to the reception in Liverpool, HMP Liverpool and whatnot, and then go through the process of being a prisoner, getting your number, getting your ID, getting strip searched and whatnot, and then you get took to your cell, which Liverpool, HMP Liverpool's an old jail, like a Victorian jail, old, cold. So we had nothing in your cells. Paul was in the next cell to me, like, so you get put behind your door. It's basically, as you think, just a cold cell, toilet, silver toilet, looking horrible. That's it. I had a chair and a bed, and that was it. And you just, like, the door closes, and you think, for fuck's sake,
this is it.
And then it must have took 2 minutes, and then a prison at my door. At my door, and they obviously they knew I was coming.
Yeah.
And then they're like, which one were you? Were you the officer? Were you, because Paul worked in security, I was the shift manager. You go, you know, were you the security lad or were you the shift manager? And I was like, doesn't matter, does it really? I'm here. Yeah. So he was at the door and he was like, you weren't horrible, were you? Was a screw. Were you horrible? I was like, nah. I said, it's just.
As if you're gonna turn around.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I was like, I was a fucker.
What a bastard.
So, yeah. So I was like, nah. I said. You know, I was alright. I said, but I'm here now. So he was talking to me and all that. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, I'm going to get killed here eventually. With segregation, you kept on your own anyway. So the only prisoners that you're going to have contact with are the lads who work on the server and do your food.
Yeah.
But you've got the staff there that don't like you because you're an ex-officer. They think you've been bent.
They think you've done something wrong to them.
Yeah, exactly. So they take that as an affront to their profession, which I would have. But to be fair, they were sound. I mean, the staff there, the lads, the officers and the prisoners, they were dead sound. They were just like, look, you took games. I might have been tempted myself. Do you know what I mean? He said, you know, you just got to try and just get on with your jail. And to be fair, the prisoner, the lad, he said, listen, he said, you got 4 months, nothing. He said, you'll remember this. He said, this part of your jail in the block, he said, this will be the worst part of your jail. He said, once you get out of here, because you'll get transferred, he said, you'll be all right. But, you know, so I got there, I think it was the Monday or the Tuesday, and I was like, but the worst thing is you don't want to eat, because you think the lads are going to spike it with either drugs, spice or whatever, or they're going to do something with it, you know, like piss in it or put something in it. So I was like, no, I'm not eating. So I didn't eat for like 3 days. Yeah.
It's worth mentioning as well, the time I knew you as well, you didn't eat.
No.
Was that preparing?
No, it wasn't
really.
No, I've never really been a big eater. I only really eat 1 meal a day.
I didn't even see that, you did.
No, I know, yeah.
Sitting there with 2 Mackies and the one.
Yeah, I know. But to be fair, it did help me because I say for like, I think 2.5 days I went without food, and the staff were like, you're not it? I was like, yeah, I'm alright. Do you know what I mean? Because I thought, I'm not eating that because I don't want to be. I just thought if they put drugs in it and like spice, I just don't, because I've seen the amount of people on, you know, I've seen people die in spice in jail, and you know. So I thought, nah, fuck that. So in the end, one of the Serbian lads come up to the door and said, listen mate, he said, you've not ate for 3 days, we've noticed. You know, we won't fuck about with your food. You know, come out for your food, we'll make sure you get, you know, it's alright. So I thought, do you know what, that's sound. I said, you know, I've got to take it at face value. So that day, I know I went out and I had some food and then they were sound, the lads. Yeah. But I started writing. As soon as I got there, I ordered like a writing pad. So I was writing from the first day I got there, because I thought I'll just write about how I'm feeling, what the situation's like, and that's what I did when I was all through the sentence, writing and trying to write my memoirs, but stories down and me experiences in jail, which I've been doing since I got out as well. So that's something I was trying to make a positive and do a book and write a story.
And did you write anything? Were you writing about your time as a guard, or were you writing about your time?
Both, yeah.
So while you were in there, you were writing about your experiences there. And
I started off the first day I got into the block, and I was like, this is how I'm feeling, you know, this is what the cell's like, you know, and you basically, you know, and I did it like an hour. You get a set regime. I know it sounds stupid, but you do. So when you get up in the morning, you go out for your exercise on the yard, come out, have a shower, do a bit of, you get a book. I was reading like a book a day, just because you read, have your dinner, have a bit of a nap, read more, write more. So I was just writing about how it was in the jail, but then obviously there's not too much to do and there's not that much going on. So then I was writing about what we've talked about today, different stories, how I've dealt with, you know, all the funny things, just all about my life really as an officer. And then I literally started reading the lad who did the podcast with, Neil Samworth, and I was reading his book and stuff, and I'm thinking, do you know what? If he's wrote a book about his time and it's successful and he can get it published, then maybe there's a scope for mine, you know, because I have, as I say, over 15 years of being an officer, and there's not that many people that have had the viewpoint of being behind the other side of the door and being a prisoner. So that just kept me going and writing and that while I was in the block, because there's nothing to do in there, do you know, and it's, you know, you've got your toilet, which is obviously hanging, and it's cold, it was so freezing.
Yeah, and there's no privacy as well with your toilet, is there? You sat in front of your cellmate.
Yeah, well, at the time we were in the block, we were on our own, because you don't get padded up together in the block, you're single cells, so you can't even talk to anyone, so you're just in yourself for 23 hours a day, with nothing but the walls to look at, apart from a book and me writing. So yeah, but then and then one of the staff gave me like a little radio, transistor radio, so I could listen to Talk Sport, wherever I could get that, and I was listening, so that helped. And it was the Derby day. Everton beat Liverpool in the Derby, you know.
Of course, you were.
I was the only time Everton win at Anfield. I was in jail.
You can't even wind up about it.
So I was just like, so I always remember that, like, and then so we did a week there, and time went quite quick, to be honest. Didn't have any issues. Saw a couple of the governors, and they said, look, we'll transfer you. Don't know when, but you're not going to be here, like, because you can't stay here. So I was like, all right. And then I think the day after, they come and says, right, you're going to transferred. So I was like, okay, where are we going? They said, don't know. They didn't tell us. So I said thanks to the lads, you know, the Serby lads, the prisoners, you know, you helped me out, you know, you've looked after us really. And they were sound. And then we got put on a bus and we went to Lincoln. HMP Lincoln, which obviously we worked around Lincoln. Well,
I've been to Lincoln a lot.
So
my ex-girlfriend from Lincoln.
Oh yeah, tell the story.
No.
So we got to Lincoln thinking, you know, they'll know about us, or they're expecting us, ex-prison officers and whatnot. And then we got there and they didn't have a clue who we were, why we were turning up.
Massive relief.
So I was like, oh God forbid. So like, what you do you know what I mean? Because obviously, do you risk it? Going like, because I could be padded up. I didn't know I was going to share a cell with my mate. I could have shared a pad with anyone, you know, anybody. So it was like, what do you do here? Do you know what I mean? Am I going to go to sleep with one eye open? So we were saying, well, we'll go to your block, you know, your segregation. We said, because otherwise there's no guarantee you're going to keep us safe. Because once prison officers are the worst ones for keeping secrets, you know what I mean? Because once word gets around with ex-officers, then, you know, you're going to have a cross on your back. So they offered us, there was a wing, there's like in different wings that you call them VPs, vulnerable prisoners, they're in debt for drugs or whatever in there, or whatever, for whatever incidents. So we were put on a wing, and it was like half vulnerable prisoners, which were like, they call them, which are like running debt or whatever, or they've upset the wrong people in jail. And then above there was the sex offenders, which they kept or not, and kept in. We had nothing, we were kept separate from them, but we had this. So I was padded up with Paul, so we just kept ourselves to ourselves really. And then Lincoln, it's not like Manchester or Liverpool, do you know what I mean? It's quite a quiet place, and there was no real issues with other prisoners and all that. We never went out for exercise, we just thought we'll just keep ourselves to ourselves.
And when did you find out you were going to be buddied up together?
As soon as we got there, we just said, listen, you know, I don't want to be, you know, we're not insisted because you can't insist, but you just said, listen. And as well as, as COVID was on as well, you had to do like a 2-week period anyway.
Yeah, because you were enduring.
Yeah, so we had to be kept anyway. As soon as you come in, you get kept on a wing for 2 weeks anyway while you do your tests. So they put us together anyway. So it was a case of we were together. So they just, because we thought we'd get Cat D, which is an open jail. Yeah. Because obviously we're not a risk to anybody and we've never been inside before or whatever. But that wasn't an option. We were speaking to people and saying, look, are we going to go to an open jail? But no one told us anything. So we just thought, oh, we're going to be kept here for our sentence, which we did in the end. But it's difficult, obviously, because you've got to get used to sharing a cell with someone. And you've been an officer, I've been an officer, he was an officer, and you know, you've got to go into cells and you've got to be strip searched and you've got to go to the toilet in front of your cellmate. Yeah. And it's difficult, you know, you go for your showers and you've got to be wary that no one's going to, you know, say anything to you. So it's like, because you get all these, but obviously it was easier for us because we knew what to expect. Although we didn't know the area, we knew what we were coming into, so nothing was a surprise. Say if it was you that had not been in jail and you'd not any experience.
Yeah, not knowing what to expect.
Yeah, so we had that background, so it was nothing. We got a cell search one day and got the cell searched there, but apart from that, they just kept just kept ourselves to ourselves. And the staff really didn't talk to us, to be fair. They hardly spoke to us. Fucking in the 4 months, I didn't know any of the staff's name. They never introduced you. You know, we could have been swinging. We could have killed ourselves, got that many times, because you didn't see a member of staff, and especially self.
Didn't know what you meant when you said swinging. Though.
Oh yeah, no. Well, we could have done that as well, I suppose. Yeah, so it was a bit of, the jail wasn't great there, like Lincoln. It was, the staff were useless, but it's one of them things. We got through it. But as I say, it's a case of you pad up because it was COVID. No one could go anywhere, so you're literally in your cell all day. With like you go mad. Do you know what I mean? You gotta like wind it. And we did have some good laughs and you know and what.
Did you find you had to watch what you said out loud, or did everyone in there know you were prison guards? Or?
I don't think. I'm not too sure. I heard over it when I come on the shower one day. I heard someone saying, "Oh, these are ex-screws and all that." I did hear that a couple of times, but apart from the staff knew where we were, but the prisoners really didn't. As I say, because it was COVID, you're only let out so many times you go in the shower, and we didn't speak to anyone really. We just fucking kept ourselves to ourselves, and especially I didn't cut my hair or shave for like 4 months. When I came out, I had a beard out here. My hair was everywhere. I just looked like some stick at a dump. I looked like a right tramp. I just didn't care. I was like, I don't care what I look
like Doc Ock.
yeah. So everyone just got out the shower, and I got in there. I think that's the reason. So so it's just we had that kind of we tried to make the best of it. Obviously, I spoke to Archie every day, rang him every day, spoke to him. His mum told him the situation. Obviously, he had a few tears the first day, but he knew once I was speaking to him every day, and he was great. He got on with it. You know, when I was really proud of him the way he handled it. And looking back now, you think it did drag, don't be wrong, but then so you speak to people and you go, oh, it's going quick, innit? And you're thinking, not really, no, it's a bit every day. Because all you did had your TV.
Counting the hours.
So you planned your day around your telly, so in the morning you had fucking, I don't know, Homes Under the Hammer, then you had this and that. And then you had your food, the food was horrific. Do you know what I mean? I lost like 2 stone when I was in there. Yeah. I mean, I don't eat much anyway, but literally one day you got a pack. The dinner was an egg, a boiled egg, and a pack of super noodles. Nice. That's your dinner, and you're like, what the fuck? Okay. If that was Manchester, where I were, the jail would have gone up, there would have been riots if that's what you got fed. The food was horrendous. I spent half of it throwing out the window with the pigeons. that was the biggest highlight of the day. So yeah, me and Paul got on. I mean, we fell out a couple of times, so it was stupid stuff, arguing.
Which you would have in the same room as someone 23 hours a day.
And so you got to go to the toilet in front of each other. And it started off like, you go to the shower, right, I'll go to the toilet. So you had constipated because you didn't go to the toilet for like 3 days. And then by the end of it, you just let them rip.
And it stinks.
Exactly, it's horrible, but just by the end of it, you're just like, oh, well, we're nearly, and you count your days, and we've only got a week left or 2 weeks. But we still didn't even know. Up to the 2 days before, we didn't know we were getting out.
Right.
Because we were like, because we knew when we were eligible to get out on the tag. Yeah. For the 3 months you got your tag.
Did you know it was any time soon, or?
Yeah, I knew we were that day. Like we knew whatever day. I think it was the 7th of June or something. That's when
I'm guessing that's when it went the slowest, when you're waiting for them to
sell. Yeah. So and then eventually got a letter saying, yeah, you get released that day, and it was like, oh, thank God for that. I mean, we still had to be on tag. We still had a tag for 3 months.
You find out the day you're getting released. That day.
Well, the day before.
Right.
We always knew when the time we were eligible for getting released, but nobody told us we were actually getting released. So you didn't want to take it for gospel that you were going to get your tag. So we done 4 months in the end, and as I say, then I had 3 months on tag, which I couldn't even work because I couldn't be out after 7 o'clock or whatever, so I couldn't like go back to working with you.
Yeah, no,
because of the hours.
When you're going to be home.
Exactly.
If you want to be home.
I didn't want to go because all you do is automatically get dragged back. But then I've still got like my proceeds of crime thing hanging over me, which still hasn't been rectified either. So I've got to go back and that's dragged out again. It should have been dealt with while I was in jail. It hasn't. It's got to be dragged out again till next. Oh, we're in this year now, so June. So I've still got to deal with that. So that's still a bit of a thing hanging over my head. But I've got fuck all, so there's nothing I can give them because I haven't got anything to give them.
Yeah. But it could result in you going.
Yeah, if they say this is what you, this is what we want, and it's a weird situation. It's only been over the last few years. This pocket, it's called, it's been a big thing because they're after drug dealers and whatever people that make big money, tax evasion and all this. But so they'll say this is what we think you can pay back. If you don't pay that back, you can serve another 18 months. You can actually get more sentence from the actual crime for proceeds of crime if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it actually can go back to jail for longer than they actually spent in jail. So it's a weird situation, really. So yeah, so I've still got that, and then it's just a case of moving forward now and trying to, and as I say, I've been trying to finish my book that I've been doing. As I say, I did the podcast with Sam, which were well received. I was getting loads of good feedback. I did the initial one with a guy called Faris Howard. He got hold of me on Twitter because I put something on Twitter, and he did the full metal straight jacket, and that was the first one I did, the podcast.
Yeah.
And he's a sound lad. Him and his mate Dave got in touch with me, and I did his for the 2 hour chat. And he's such a lovely fella. I did that, and as I say, then I got in touch with Sam and we did the 4 podcasts about Forest Bank, which are on YouTube. And
we'll have to put a link to both of them podcasts, the Full Metal Jacket and the other one, in the description, so anyone who hasn't seen them can, because they are a good listen as well.
Yeah, they've been, as I say, got a lot of good feedback from people I don't even know, people that are still at Forest Bank, officers around the country that have listened to them and whatnot. I'm hoping, as I say, I can get some traction on writing a book. And doing more of these. As I say, we've started doing this together, and I've done a couple of university talk. Well, I've done one university talk, which was well received as well. I'm just trying to think of what it was, where I did it, but it was online. But I did that anyway with Shannon, a girl at De Blasio. They got in touch with me, so I'm hoping that I can get a few of them done as well, and hopefully go into the training side of it, and give talks, and as I say, and I'm hoping to progress this together. Hopefully people will find it interesting and want to listen again.
And it's worth saying as well, for people who are listening for the first time to the story, is every time, like any story, every time you tell a story, there's other little details that you remember whilst you're telling it, and you find out different details. So it's, if you've listened to it this time, it's still worth going to the other podcast and listening to it. At that time.
Definitely.
Because like you say, as you're telling it, you're remembering different details and.
And it's hard because, as I say, because over so many years, and you do, as I say, you forget things, and as we're talking, something else.
It's like telling any story, you miss out certain things which you might cover in another thing. We'll go more in depth with certain parts, so it's worth listening to the other podcasts. And I know we're gonna go more in detail in separate episodes about specific stories that happened.
Definitely. As I say, there's so many instances that people that have seen it, and as I say, we'll talk more about incidents and what the difficulties staff have to go through, which they don't get credit for, because the people I've worked with, I don't get wrong, you get people that aren't great at the job, but I've had so many colleagues that are absolutely spot on and superb at what they do in the whole profession, within a jail, because there's not just people that close doors and lock doors. There's people, the nurses there, the mental health teams that they've got, the gym staff, the healthcare staff that do so much good work that don't get recognised, and that's what I'm trying to get through to people. The difficulties of the job that they do, because it's a lot of this, like the NHS, which have done, they've done so much good work over COVID and all that, and they do, and they don't get enough applause and whatnot. But the staff at, like, working in prisons still have to come into work every day, still have to deal with that 24/7 during the pandemic as well, and I think they get overlooked a little bit because, as I say, as well as the job they've got to do under those circumstances, as well as wearing masks 24/7 and dealing with that and getting all the abuse, because prisoners, they've not been able to see the families for 12 months. They've not had any, outside sort of seeing the families coming to jail because they haven't been allowed. So but we'll touch with that, and as I say, and the more people that listen and they can get hold of us on different platforms of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, feel free to message anything really, anything that you want to be bringing up with regards to prison or anything, or people that have worked with or ex-prisoners, and we'll talk about it.
And any questions people have got, leave them in the comments, and we'll maybe do an episode specifically answering questions as well.
Do one of them. Ask me anything. As I say, I'm open, and as I say, I've told my story, and I'm open to anything really. I've got nothing to hide with it. So if there's anything that people want to know, we're here for that as well. So it's been a good first start, hopefully, and as I say, more people that like it, we'll go on from there.
Happy days. So if you're listening for the first time, make sure you subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social media. It's linked in the channel banner. You just click on the links and leave a rating as well if you did like the podcast and enjoyed it, and leave some questions in the comments and we'll get to them.
Yeah, sound. Well.